time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed, on a Tuesday, and great to have you all with us. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes. We'll preview the NBA Finals with Kurt Heelan of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. With the Pacers and Thunder getting that series started on Thursday. Sammy Arnell will be by. We'll get into some baseball. There are some interesting notes to get to from there, and a whole bunch more. But we start things out in hockey because the Stanley Cup Final is set. We talked about it a bit on the show yesterday. We get into it some more today with our friend Dennis Bernstein of thefourthperiod.com and SiriusXM NHL Radio, who's kind enough to hang out with us from an undisclosed location in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. See, they still allow Americans into Edmonton, Alberta.
They love me up here. I got a lot of friends, Jason. It's not, don't listen to all the fake news out here. So I'm glad to be with you. And yeah, the last leg of the marathon is about to start tomorrow.
Try and give me the vibe, walking around the city. I mean, I know you've only been there, for a day or whatever, but try and give me a sense for what the vibe is like up there for the rematch between these two teams.
They think their team's going to win, unlike last year when they were just happy their team was in it for the first time in a very long time. There's a lot of confidence. Number one, they have a Game 7 here, so there's a Game 7. It'll be played in an arena. That's probably the loudest in the NHL right now. So there's a lot of confidence because this team is playing great. They've won 12 of their last 14 playoff games. You don't do that if you're average, Jason. So there's a lot of anticipation that there'll be a parade here sometime later in June.
Well, you mentioned the difference in the fans, and you led perfectly, almost like you knew what I wanted to ask. You talk about the difference in the mindset of the fan base from happy to be in it last year to expecting to win it this year. Mm-hmm. What is the biggest difference on the ice in what could facilitate that?
Yeah, it's a much deeper team, without question. And it's probably a little bit better. And here's the thing, the Florida Panthers are better too, so they need a better version of the Edmonton Oilers. It's the depth. Connor McDavid, if they win, he's probably going to win the Conn Smythe for MVP of the playoffs. Leon Draisaitl always puts up good numbers. But this run hasn't been about those guys. It's been about Corey Perry, at 48, at age of 40. It's Vander Kane who play a regular season game all year. It's about John Klingberg, who had hip resurfacing surgery, and there's questions if he's ever going to play again. It's about those guys, and they've been so good because they could rely on the depth. From skater 1 to skater 18 every night, they had the best 18 players. That's something different. This was a top-heavy team before, Jason. It now more relies on a depth, which, as you saw last year with the Panthers and with the Vegas Golden Knights before them, that's how you win in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Stuart Skinner. I mean, if there's one thing you point to and say, that it gives you cause for concern, it's the journeyman goaltender. When you match up these two teams and put them side by side, and you look at what the Panthers have in net versus what Edmonton has in net, is that the one area that gives you concern if you're an Oiler fan?
It depends how Stu plays, and you don't really know. It's it's Forrest Gump. It's like he's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Like if he makes 2 or 3 big saves in the first 7 or 8 minutes, you got the good Stuart Skinner. If he stays back in his net, overplays his net, doesn't play his angles, and is not mentally into the game, you're going to lose that game. And that's the risk. And you're right, it's an advantage for the Florida Panthers. You'd always take Bobrovsky. You take Bobrovsky in a Game 7. He beat this guy in a Game 7 last year, and Skinner played great. So I think there's concern. But again, the Oilers are playing such much better defense right now, Jason, that the other opposition doesn't get a lot of sniffs at the net, and that certainly helps Skinner.
What has Matthias Ekholm meant to this team? We haven't talked a lot about him.
Yeah, he's their best defenseman. He's their heart and soul. He's their warrior. Sure, Evan Bouchard has amazing gifts, and he's a great offensive player. But the best all-around player or defenseman is Matthias Ekholm. He's a leader on that team. So it means a lot to this team to get him back. They're already playing well defensively. The only concern you might have a little bit is where you put him in a lineup. All these players are working very, very well, and you want to put a guy in here who's, again, your best defenseman. So it's going to be a little, maybe a little bit more difficult for Chris Knoblauch to navigate that. But he means a lot, and that's another reason why I'm picking the Oilers here in the final.
Oh. You are picking the Oilers. Okay. Well,
it's not going to be easy, but yeah.
We've talked a lot here about the Oilers. Let's shift it over to Florida here for a second. You talked about how the Oilers are better, deeper, all of that. Talk about how you think Florida has improved from a team that won the Stanley Cup, now gone to 3 straight, only the 9th team in NHL history to go to 3 straight. Talk about, where they've improved and obviously put themselves in this position.
Carolina Hurricanes is a pretty good team. They are. And they got waxed by the Florida Panthers. You saw them at their best. Aggressive, physical, right? Timely scoring, and skill. That play that Barkov made to Verhaeghe for basically the series-winning goal was a thing of beauty. That's only see a handful of players make that play. So they're ready. And here's the thing, and I'll draw a comparison. Zach Hyman, who was a 50-goal scorer last year, before he broke his wrist, he led the league. He led the playoffs in hits. He's a more physical player, right? It's about great players who want to adapt. I'll give you an example. Brad Marchand. Any other player would have came in and say, okay, I'm a Hall of Famer. I want to play with Barkov and Sam Reinhart. No. He deferred. He said, okay, I'll go play with Luster, and Lundell, and we'll make a great third line. That's what makes this team great. That's what makes Paul Maurice such a great coach. They have guys willing to pay the price to do that. They're better because they're deeper as well. Having Marchand on your third line, you're a damn good team, right? So that's why this could be a better version, as great as last year was. And Stanley Cup final, this could be a better version of that final because both these teams are improved. They can match depth. The goaltenders are about the same, and the defense is about even. So it's a very evenly matched final, Jason. So when I pick the Oilers, I'm picking them obviously in 7 games. I wouldn't pick them before that because I don't think there's much separating these teams, and the Panthers could easily win.
Last one. I only got a minute here. Does the rest for both of these teams and how you prepare your teams when you have this much time off, Dennis? I think the coaches are going to earn their pay here because, there's the rust versus rest factor. Yes. I think there's going to be a lot of analysis in depending on how these first couple of games play out, in which coach had their team the most prepared coming off such a long break.
Yeah, and maybe today, I'm sure that question would be cool asked because you're playing great, and you could probably, I would say you're probably welcoming the rest from a physical standpoint. We don't know how injured all these guys are, who is really injured. So I think that's the one positive for this time off. But yeah, if you win in 12 or 14, Chris Nolan, you want the team to keep playing, not lose momentum, right? So, but I think it's evenly matched because the Panthers were playing well too. But you're right, whoever adapts quicker to get to their game quicker will certainly have an advantage in this final.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. All right, Dennis Bernstein says take the Oilers, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a tough postseason to predict. We'll see how it all shakes out. I look forward to talking to you throughout what is hopefully a long and entertaining series. Thank you, my friend.
It was a pleasure, JP.
We're coming back with more Sports Wrap on this Tuesday. Kurt Heelan of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com will join us next. Welcome back to the show. Sports Wrap continues on this Tuesday. We move away from the NHL Stanley Cup Finals to the NBA Finals, which gets started on Thursday. Bringing our friend Kurt Heelan of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. Now, if you jump into that pool while we're doing the segment, I've got a fresh $5 bill in my pocket that I will send your way. It would probably take more than that $5 bill, though.
This is the Marriott Courtyard Flex, baby. I'm going to be in hotels for a few weeks with the finals, and so here you go.
I said, man, this is the flex of flexes doing it poolside. I was like, is that a green screen behind you? And then I saw the water moving. I was like, no, this is real.
When NBC on Peacock used to have Brother from Another and Michael Hawley and Michael were doing their thing back and forth, I was on their show all the time. And they were recording in New York, and I used to once a year, because I've got a pool in my backyard at home, do the thing with I'd wait for some freezing week on the East Coast, and then just show up and do in a T-shirt doing it by my pool just to rub it in.
That's fair. So let's talk about this NBA Finals matchup, and I've been racking my brain trying to think about underdogs. When we did the show last Friday, Sam said he thought that the Pacers would be like a minus 400, or that the Thunder would be a minus 400 favorite, and it wound up being a lot more than that. And the Pacers find themselves as huge underdogs in this series, which is probably just what Rick Carlisle and this team have thrived on really throughout this postseason. Is it a missed number, as we like to say in the sports betting world? Not to get all geeky on sports betting, because I'm not the guy to do that, but is this a missed number, or are the Thunder that much better than the Pacers on paper?
I think two things. I think the Thunder are that much better than the Pacers on paper, but if you're going to talk about Rick Carlisle, you're going to talk about the year that he took a Dallas team that was a huge underdog, did have that Dirk Nowitzki guy, but was a massive underdog against the juggernaut Heat in their first year, right? And won that title, right? There are similarities in that sense that, like, man, if we can just get our foot in the door, if we can show teams that we can't hang with them, and that's what they're going to have to prove. They're going to have to prove that they can run their offense, that Tyrese Halliburton can run their offense, that they can get this free-flowing ball movement offense and up-tempo offense going against what has been a dominant defense this year. And I think most of the betting public and certain pundits may think that Oklahoma City's defense is just too good for this, but that's the argument. Like, there is a path.
What's stunning to me is, and again, not to get geeky on the sports betting part of this, the number hasn't even moved. Like, usually when you see a number that big, the betting public, the early money will go flying in on the underdog, and that number will come down. And it hasn't, which to me means everybody's looking at the Thunder and going, yeah, they're this big of a favorite for a reason. Look, both of the teams have depth. That is one thing. And the other thing that I've noticed, I was talking about this with my editor from MSNBC, because we were floating around me writing a column on this NBA Finals series. And one of the things we've talked about is, as much as we talk about big twos and big threes and teams building around, these sort of manufactured star-laden lineups, these teams have gone about it differently than we've seen in this era of trying to pack together superstars and lump them all together in these labs and trying to make championship teams out of them. These two teams have done it a lot differently, Kurt.
They have done it much differently. And by the way, just on the betting thing, our previews come out today, our best bets in there, was just trying to nail the exact number of games, trying to nail which games teams win, because there's not much money in betting Shea for MVP or the Thunder. You are, by the way, though, spot on about how these teams are built. And I think that is a credit to teams that are handling the new tax apron era better. There's the old school way of building a team like Phoenix, which, if their chemistry problems went beyond just having 3 stars, they ended up not meshing. But the idea that, like, hey, if we get 3 stars and surround them with okay talent, we're going to be okay, doesn't really work in the new CBA. You're going to see teams built more like Denver, one superstar, a guy in Jamal Murray who's getting paid like one, and can rise to that level for a stretch, and the Aaron Gordons and Michael Porter Jr.'s. And in this case, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams, who are the 2 of them, by the way, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, still on their rookie deals, and will be again next year, which makes this all very affordable. They're going to have some cost-cutting stuff coming in the future, but it may not be those guys. I think this is how teams are going to be built for a while, at least under this CBA. You're going to want a philosophy and a style. I think Indiana's done this perfectly. You found your star in Halliburton. How do we build a team that maximizes what he can do with the rest of the roster rather than just compiling talent?
You found your star in Halliburton, but then, conference finals MVP comes around, he doesn't even win it. He's standing there ready to walk forward to pick up the award. And the only thing missing was the music from Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he's getting ready to walk forward and take the award. And then they hand it to Pascal Siakam. Not for nothing, the worst thing that could have happened to the Thunder was him not winning that conference finals MVP, because it just gave him more motivation for these finals.
And funny thing is, I was thinking I would have voted for Pascal just because he was on top of he scored 30-plus in 3 of the 4 wins. But I think what was really key is his defense on Karl Anthony Towns was huge in that series. His ability to switch and give them some defensive looks and play on both ends was, to me, what swung this. And it's nothing against Halliburton. I think that would have been a perfectly great choice as well. He's obviously the hub that makes everything in Indiana work. But I thought Pascal was in the same way that Jaylen Brown was the best, Celtic in the finals last year because everything had loaded up on Tatum. I thought Pascal stepped up and played his role.
So many times, and I only got about 30 seconds here, we watched the Pacers turn defense into offense really quick, and it feels like the Thunder do that, but do it better. So in some regards, are the Pacers going to have to slow it down a little bit?
No, I don't think they can. I don't think that's how they win, but that's their ultimate problem. Look, Tyrese Halliburton's brilliant, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a better version of it.
Yeah.
The Pacers have been playing better defense, and like you said, forcing some turnovers and getting out and running. The Thunder have the best transition defense in the league and run better than them, and it just goes Holmgren's better than Miles Turner. Just on down the line, it just keeps going like that.
All right, we're going to come back and do more with Kurt Heelan on the NBA. Don't go anywhere. Coming up in 10 minutes, Mike Trout. Reports of his demise greatly exaggerated, apparently. We'll get to that coming up. Some other baseball notes. Continuing the conversation on the NBA with the NBA Finals kicking off on Thursday. Kurt Heelan hanging out with us. Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com is his jam as we get ready for these NBA Finals. So what's your official prediction? How many games are we going Thunder here?
Thunder in 5 is my official prediction. I want to believe more in the Pacers. I almost wanted to give them 6, but this is not a good matchup for them, I think.
All right, fair enough. Move away from that series. I want to get to a few other NBA notes with you and start with the Knicks because there has been a lot of conversation in the days following their postseason demise, coming up 6 games short of that elusive NBA title, 50 years plus since their last, Kurt. That there are potentially some big moves in the offing, or in this offseason for this team. It doesn't sound like one of them is going to be a head coach. It sounds like Tom Thibodeau's job is safe. But there is talk of potentially trying to figure out some way to package enough guys to bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo, whether it's Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns or, some 3-way deal with another team involved. Do you see a scenario? Is there a path for the Knicks to get Giannis to New York?
I'm going to start here. Giannis has to ask for a trade. He has yet to do that. He has yet to meet with them. And there's a growing suspicion around the league that may not be as ironclad as people thought. Probably still more likely than not, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying the options, he doesn't want to go west if he wants, because it's stacked. But if he wants to stay in the East, it's hard to put together a deal that doesn't, like with the Knicks. You can't do it without a third team and, frankly, without just decimating the roster to make it happen. The Knicks would probably like to move on from Bridges, wouldn't they? If you were the Knicks, you just gave up 5 firsts for him, but that didn't mesh as well. Giannis provides the defense you need next to Towns, but again, you might want to have to move Towns in this. And so I just don't know if they have the picks. This is why you need a third team. If I'm Milwaukee, I want younger players and picks and retooling this thing, and I don't know how you do that around what the Knicks have to offer. They just gave up all their young players and picks.
And you say Tibbs is safe. I still say if Mike Malone politicked for that job, you're saying there's no way Mike Malone is the head coach of the Knicks.
I still don't think it happens. That's a James Dolan call, and I don't like predicting what James Dolan is going to do on any given day.
Yeah.
But Tibbs is Leon Rose's guy, and more importantly, Tibbs is Jalen Brunson's guy. And it's really hard to go against what your star player wants.
He could become a Mike Malone guy real fast.
That'd be an interesting fit. It's not a long-term answer, but it might be a short-term boost.
All right, fair enough. The Zion Williamson story, when this broke last week, I was texting with you, and we didn't really know a lot about what was going on. Yeah. By the way, when Tony Busby doesn't want to represent the accuser in this case, I'm kind of going, this is kind of odd, because Tony Busby never met an accuser he didn't want to represent. More to the point in moving away from the allegations themselves, which is obviously a whole nother conversation. From the basketball standpoint, which is why we have you on, how difficult does it make to move him if the Pelicans were thinking of moving him in this offseason when you have, even if it is just a civil case, something like this hanging over him?
And it's not, again, without going down the road, it is not the first personal life allegation in recent years against issue with Zion. It does impact some teams more than others. Some teams would not want to bring that into their culture. There's other teams that would be willing to look past that, assuming, and by the way, just the way this plays out, as somebody who's started out as a Cub court reporter back in the day and spent a lot of time in courtrooms, this strikes as the kind of PR move you make when you're trying to get a fast settlement, right? If that's the case and this thing settles, there are teams that would do it, but those teams already were looking for lowball deals, and now they're really going to come in. Like if they're willing to give him up for very little going out, like one or two first round picks and a couple of okay players to match the salary, that's possible, but that's not what they're going to want. They're going to want this haul back. And the only way they get a haul back is to play Zion, to have him play well, and for him to play 60 games next.
The Suns coaching search looks like it's down to just a couple of guys here. With the offseason getting ready to get started here in earnest, obviously there's a priority to get a hire done. It sounds like it's down to Johnny Bryant or Jordan Ott. Does any one versus the other make sense to you?
They both bring a belief in grittiness that is something that the Suns think they lacked last year. From the outside, I don't want to predict what Matt Ishbia is going to do either, but Ott brings a lot to the table, including, by the way, Michigan State ties, where he was a video coordinator for years. So, that always seems to play well with Ishbia. I think either of them could do the job. It's just, you do an interesting job. They're the kind of guys who deserve a first-time shot. It's just, what is that roster going to look like next year? It's not going to have Kevin Durant. It's going to be built, retooled around Devin Booker. In a deep, they're going to be trying to win, but in a deep West, you resurrect John Wooden and give him the job. I'm not sure how much that's going to matter with the roster, though. Any
chance in the last minute here, any chance that the Mavericks trade the number one pick and the ticket to Cooper Flag?
No, I've been told that I was told they wouldn't do it for Giannis, basically. It's just not available. Like they want the younger timeline. They want him to come in and be the bridge to the future after whatever comes up with Kyrie and with Anthony Davis, who are in their 30s. So, no, they might trade it for Wemby, but that's not a discussion to have. So, that pick isn't going anywhere. Starting at number 2, though, business is ready. Business is open.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting. Anything new on the Celtics front in terms of how they're going to handle their offseason?
Nothing new. They just lost one of their assistant GMs to the Jazz. Yeah. One of the Ainges. No, but they've got to trim about $30 million in salary, and that probably means a couple of guys with either Drew Holiday or Derek White being the big name. They're not going to look the same next year.
Porzingis? And you think Porzingis is back there next year?
I think they'd like to move Porzingis. I don't know if that's as feasible. I don't know that there's as big a market for them as what they're going to be seeking.
All right, Kurt Heelan, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. Enjoy the NBA Finals. We'll talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it, man.
We're coming back. All right, this Tuesday edition of Sports Wrap continues. Let's move away from the playoff stuff. Let's get focused on baseball. There are a few big stories to talk about today. Welcome in our friend Sam Yarnell. Hangs out with us on the show. Get his thoughts on some baseball. David Ardsma on the show tomorrow and Thursday. Now, Thursday will actually be travel day for me as I go back east. We'll be doing some shows from out on the East Coast for about a week and a half. But Thursday I'll actually be traveling So we'll be putting together Thursday show on Wednesday. Just a little peek behind the curtain. David Ardsma will be part of Wednesday and Thursday's show. So plenty of baseball on those shows on Wednesday and Thursday. So David will join us tomorrow. All right, Sam. Mike Trout's back. And every time we want to bury this guy, every time we want to get to the point where it's like, all right, it's over. It's done. The guy's career's finished. He rises like Lazarus from the dead. And here is Mike Trout again, hitting an epic home run at Fenway Park on Monday night.
Wow.
450 plus feet. And, and he's come out of the box swinging literally here. Since coming off the IL, he's lifted his average from like 175 to 225, and look, it's not a huge bar to get over when you start off as poorly as he did in terms of batting average. He was driving in runs and stuff like that and hitting home runs, but he said he used the time off and used the time away to really work on his swing as much as he could, because he could only take 30 to 40 swings a day. But it just goes to show you this guy's dedication to his craft, that even at this stage of his career where we all think he's done, he's still doing everything he can to be his very best.
Well, what I think is interesting about this whole thing, Jason, and you're exactly right about raising your average. It is great. However, you are due to do that when you've only had 120 at-bats all season, and you're competing with guys who have had, upwards of, 300 at this point. But here's the thing, right? I think what's interesting about this whole situation is that the Angels actually, this time when Mike Trout got injured, remained in contention, and you can argue that it's the worst division in baseball, and I won't disagree with you very hard. But the fact of the matter is the Angels have remained somewhat within striking distance of the Mariners, Astros, and Rangers, who they're all looking up at. And quite frankly, when you finally got the pieces around him working, Zach Neto's been red hot, homered again yesterday, I believe. Taylor Ward's been red hot for like 2.5 weeks now. This is just a team that finally feels like they've got a chance, which is so funny because we went through all the Ohtani years and Trout would get injured. And as much as Ohtani would do, you'd think, this team just doesn't have enough around them. It finally feels like the things may have all fallen into place for the Angels to compete for the division for once in Mike Trout's career.
Yeah, I still worry about their pitching. I just don't think there's enough pitching there. But look, the one thing we know about them, and we've seen it over the last few years, when they had opportunities, they could have traded away Ohtani and gotten something for him. They still tried to trade to put pieces around him to try and win. The one thing we know about the Angels is they will try to make trades to better themselves at the deadline, whether it's for the better or worse.
Yeah, so I was actually having the Ohtani conversation's a unique one, and I think in my hindsight 2020 era, it feels like the Ohtani trade from an organizational standpoint was not the right thing for the Angels to do at that time. And it's not because of the baseball and the on-the-field stuff. It's because the Angels made as much money from sponsorships and overseas revenue in the 2 extra months they had Shohei Ohtani as they have probably in the time since, would be my guess.
Well, but sure, from a business standpoint, it made sense. But from a building your baseball team standpoint, it didn't make sense. You could have added so many pieces to your farm system potentially. It didn't, from that perspective, it didn't make sense.
I think this is a team, though, in the Angels that made a couple of bad moves right around the turn of 2020 to try and build around Shohei Ohtani, and they were scarred for it for years to come, and we're still kind of seeing we're finally seeing them start to come out of that phase in these young prospects that they're seeing work out in your Nolan Schanuels, in your Joe Adells.
All right, let's get to a couple other ones real quick. Luke Weaver, 4 to 6 weeks the Yankees lose their closer. Yes, I'm a pro. Didn't turn off the phone. Pro move there. Luke Weaver out 4 to 6 weeks for the Yankees. That is a huge loss for this team, considering I don't think Devin Williams is ready to close games. I don't care that, he hasn't allowed a run in 11 of his last 13 appearances. Listen, I've watched him. He is a heart attack on the mound waiting to happen as a fan of the Yankees every time he goes out there. I am not confident that Devin Williams is going to be able to carry this thing at the closer spot for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Prepared to be white-knuckled if you're a Yankee fan for the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. But here's where Yankees fans should take solace in. We were just talking about the AL West being the worst division in baseball.
Yeah.
The AL East is pretty much their competition right now. That division has been a letdown pretty much across the board. And I don't really see any team taking that next step to compete with the Yankees. I think they'll just kind of middle their way along to winning that division.
I agree with that. Fernando Cruz, by the way, I'd rather see him closing games for the Yankees right now. He's been pretty good for them out of the pen. Kerry Carpenter, hats off to you, sir. First 3 home run game in almost a decade for the Tigers. They continue to roll. Beat up on the hapless White Sox yesterday. 3 home run day for Kerry Carpenter in the win. All right, that does it for baseball. Imagine being a PGA Tour professional, guy who's won tournaments, and carrying your own bag at U.S. Open qualifying. It happened. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back. Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. We got a banger of a semifinal setup at the French Open on the women's side after results on Tuesday morning. We'll tell you about that coming up. By the way, the coverage on TNT has been very good. For their first time, their first go-around doing this thing, I mean, I could do without Adam Lefkoe, but other than that, I've enjoyed the coverage quite a bit, I'll just say. It's not that I dislike Adam Lefkoe, I just don't think he's right for tennis. Like, I like him on the NBA stuff, when he would fill in for EJ, but I'm for tennis. Adam Lefkoe just doesn't make sense. It was like they were like, "Hey, who do we have? Oh, Adam Lefkoe, you go to Paris and do tennis." Oh, okay. Anywho, Sam Yarnell. Imagine being Max Homa. You've won PGA Tour events. You just had a pretty good run recently. What, at the PGA Championship? He played pretty well, I think it was. Or was it at the Masters? I can't remember. But he's played. Yeah, he's had a nice little renaissance this season after having a couple of rough years, sort of in the golf wilderness, if you will. And you are Max Homa. You're trying to qualify for the U.S. Open, one of the most grueling tests in all of golf. Not just the U.S. Open, but trying to get there through qualifying. And you are Max Homa, and not only are you trying to qualify, but you have to carry your own bag through the final round of qualifying. That is what happened to Max Homa, and unfortunately, he did not qualify, Sam Aaron. I don't even like to carry my own bag on the local pitch and putt, and this guy had to carry his own bag through, was it like 36 holes that he had to carry his own bag?
It's the longest day in golf.
Yeah.
It's what's colloquially known as the longest day in golf, which is what makes it even more impressive. And yeah, Jason, it is truly very, very unique that we see a sponsored pro not have a caddy with him. But it's, what golf's longest day is about. It's what these kinds of things with the U.S. Open where you've got, and the funniest thing is it was like not even one of the main stories of yesterday, because you had some kid in Georgia, some high school junior, shoot 18 under through 2 rounds. He shot back-to-back 63s to qualify for the U.S. Open. I mean, my goodness, that is what golf's longest day is about, because you'll have random professionals playing with 17-year-olds, and the 17-year-old will qualify over the professional. It's what makes an event like the U.S. Open so great for the sport of golf. It's
like Kevin Costner says in the movie Tin Cup, it's not only the greatest tournament in the world, it's the most democratic tournament in the world. All you got to do is have a, whatever handicap, and you have a chance to qualify. Simple as that. Poor Max Homa, though, doesn't get in. Cam Young managed to get it. Think about this. And again, this speaks to what you were just talking about. Cam Young once shot a 59 on the PGA Tour. I think he did it at the Travelers Championship, which, by the way, isn't even the lowest score ever at the Travelers Championship because Jim Furyk shot a 58, which I was there for, by the way. I watched him as he putted in for 58. But think about this for a second. You're a guy that shot a 59 on the PGA Tour. You've won, like, PGA Tour events. And you've got to sit there and try to, like, grind through and qualify. Again, it speaks to what makes golf in these situations such a great sport. And this tournament in particular, such a great tournament. The fact that you got a guy like Cameron Young who had to grind it out into a playoff to get himself into the tournament, Sam.
And I think what also makes it cool is that it's everybody playing everywhere all at the same time. It's everyone's playing 36 holes at all these different spots, from Georgia to New York to California to Washington. Literally every corner of the country, people are playing in these tournaments all at the same time, grinding out 36 holes, trying to compete for, 5 or 10 spots at the U.S. Open. It really is, when we think about, all of the cool things in sports, all of the unique things in sports, it truly is unique. And it's where we get stories like Michael Block from a few years ago, but it's also where we get stories that are unique to sports in a way, like they're not going to pick some random guy from the local beer league baseball team to come in and face the New York Yankees and Aaron Judge on a random Sunday. Like, that's just not going to happen. But in golf, it does. And that's really cool.
So apparently Homa broke up with his caddy, his longtime caddy, and he couldn't find anybody, or didn't want to find anybody to carry the bag for him. Made the decision to hoof it himself for 36 holes. He missed out, so it was a 5-man playoff, and he didn't get in. I guess he made par or something like that, so he didn't get in. Ricky Fowler was eliminated from the playoff with a bogey, so Ricky Fowler's not playing in the U.S. Open. Think about that for a second, which is pretty wild. You think about some of the people that made. Bud Cauley got in. Bud Cauley, who's a journeyman at best, is getting into this thing. Zach Blair is getting in, another guy that whose name you haven't heard in a long time. I think it's really interesting to look through some of the lists of the names of the guys that wound up getting in, and some of the guys that just don't make it. Go ahead, Sam.
I think that the saddest part for Homa is that it came down to the 36th hole. He bogeyed or doubled the 36th hole to put him into that playoff. If he just would have parred it, which he had a putt to make, he would have not had to go to the playoff, and he would have gotten the last spot. Just a really, really tough way for this year to continue for Max Homa.
Yeah, it is. But again, in a much better spot than he was obviously before. We'll see. Mark Leishman, who hasn't qualified for a major in the last 2 years, got a spot. Some live guys tried to get in. Sebastian Munoz didn't get in. Be fun watching the U.S. Open in a couple of weeks. We're coming back. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this Tuesday edition of the show. Don't forget, on Wednesday, David Ardsma hangs out with us, former big league closer, our closer. Get into a whole bunch of baseball stuff with him. Couple of reminders for you. Make sure, if you haven't done so yet, to check out the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. It's this show in its audio form. No commercials. Monday through Friday, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show. If you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go and do it. You can listen to us while you're in the car, in the shower, in bed, on the treadmill, subways, planes, trains, wherever you might listen to your podcasts. Go and do that. In addition to all the different TV affiliates, cable TV, streaming, all of that, that this show is available on, you can also check out Sports Wrap with Jason Page on Spotify. You can actually watch the show over there. But even cooler than that, you can watch this show over on our YouTube channel, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Available. Go and check it out. subscribe, follow, like our videos. We have Sports Wrap shorts there, clips from the show, sometimes clips not even from the show, because news is breaking all the time, and we're not on the air all the time. You get us for an hour each day. Sometimes when news breaks, we throw up YouTube. We go up to YouTube, Sports Wrap shorts. Go and check them out over on YouTube. Again, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. And without any further delays, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends. We got a banger for a French Open women's semifinal, because Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek both made it through their quarterfinal matches, and they will meet up in the semis over at the French Open. And it should be a beauty when those two get together. I don't know what the early line is on the match. Maybe we can find it here real fast. There you go. It's basically a toss-up from a betting standpoint. Aryna Sabalenka minus 108. Iga Swiatek is minus 111. And I got to be honest, that feels like a bit of a misnumber to me. I know I'm not the betting expert, according to some people. But Iga Swiatek has beaten Sabalenka 8 out of 12 times in those 12 meetings between the two, and she is 5-3 against Sabalenka on clay. Again, take that for what it is, and we know how good Swiatek has been at the French Open. Obviously, her dominance in that event over the last several years. So, if you're looking at potentially making some money, Swiatek might be the way to go when it comes to that match. And I love Sabalenka. I am a huge Aryna Sabalenka fan. Anybody who's watched me talk about her on this show whenever we have Patrick McEnroe hanging out with us knows I am a huge Sabalenka fan. I think she is as dominant a player as there is. But when it comes to playing on the clay, Swiatek is as good as it gets. So take it for what it is. Make sure to gamble responsibly. That'll be a fantastic semifinal match. NFL news. After originally looking like Jonnu Smith was the object of their affections, the Pittsburgh Steelers have seemingly changed directions when it comes to trying to get some help in the receiving department. According now to multiple sources, the Steelers, and ESPN's Adam Schefter was among those sources, the Steelers are not going to trade for the Dolphins tight end after starting in on talks with the Dolphins. And instead now, they're going to talk and have free agent tight end Gabe Davis come in for a visit with them. Remember, Davis originally with the Buffalo Bills, then last year was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, had some injury issues, a torn meniscus, had one of his lowest output seasons. As a matter of fact, it was his lowest output season in terms of yards per catch since coming into the league. Well, Gabe Davis, a free agent now, and the Steelers are going to bring him in for a visit instead of trading for Jonnu Smith. It also deserves mentioning, we still don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. And whether it's Mason Rudolph throwing the ball to somebody or Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to somebody, they got to get some help in the receiving department there. DK Metcalf is nice, but they obviously, made some moves in this offseason, and they traded away George Pickens over there in Pittsburgh. They got to go and get themselves some receiving help, and I don't know that Gabe Davis necessarily cures all the ills of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But here we are, June 3rd. We still don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. It makes you wonder, is he just watching and waiting and looking to see, what moves that team makes in terms of upgrades? Because if you're Aaron Rodgers, and I will say this again, and I have said this multiple times now, I still think the smartest move if you're Aaron Rodgers is to sit around, keep yourself in shape, go out and throw some balls on the beach, do whatever it is you do in your spare time outside of that, and wait to see what jobs avail themselves. What opportunities make themselves available to you, whether it's via injury, whether it's teams with, that need a quarterback because of poor play. You never know what opportunities are going to open up there. Why pigeonhole yourself to a Steelers franchise where even if you go there under optimal circumstances, you're probably not winning a Super Bowl anyway if you're Aaron Rodgers? Wait and see how J.J. McCarthy plays in Minnesota. Maybe they get cold feet and call you. Seeing as a lot of people think that's where he really wants to be anyway. We're out of time. We got to go. Thanks to Sam Yarnell. Kurt Heelan, Dennis Bernstein, you for watching. We're back here for another Wednesday Sports Wrap. I'll see you then.